and thank you for continuing with the Certificate 4 in Project Management. I'm Trudy Robinson, and this presentation will cover some of the requirements around task relationships, particularly for in use in timelines. The objectives of this session are to understand and apply the knowledge of requirements affecting the project schedule, in particular tasks and their relationships to one another. PMBOK 4 reference is 6.2.2, looking at page 138. A predecessor task is a task that determines the scheduling for another task. The further task is called a successor. If the predecessor task is interrupted, affected or cancelled, it will impact the successor task as well. Any predecessor task may have multiple successors. In all the following examples in this presentation, a predecessor task is identified as task P. A successor task, on the other hand, is a task whose start or finish depends on its predecessor. A successor may be delayed or affected independently of its predecessor. And of course, its successor may have multiple predecessors. And it is likely that the successor can and often will be the predecessor to the next activity. In the following examples, task S is used for a successor task. There are 4 different types of relationships that are recognised in project management. The first and the most commonly used one is a finish to start relationship. In this case, the predecessor must finish before the successor can start. If the predecessor is delayed, the successor task will suffer. And as I said, it is the most commonly used relationship. So in this case, materials cannot be identified until all dimensions have been finalised. So the predecessor is agree and finalise the dimensions, and that has to complete before the identification and ordering of materials will be undertaken. The next of the 4 is a start-to-start task relationship, and this means that 2 tasks start at the same time. Both the successor and the predecessor must start at the same time. Although both tasks start at the same time, they may have different durations, different resources, and any other variance. There is no other necessary relationship apart from the fact that they are both starting at the same time. So if one of the tasks is delayed, then so is the other one. So for example, if we had to ensure that we have training material available before we could book a trainer, both these things would have to occur at the same time. If we couldn't order the training materials, then we couldn't book the trainer. And if we couldn't book the trainer, we couldn't order the training materials. The third relationship that's recognised is a finish-to-finish relationship. And obviously this means that both tasks must finish at the same time. No matter what has occurred before the tasks, how long they've taken, which resources have been applied, etc., they both must finish at the same time. So if one task is delayed, then so is the other. So in the instances where we're going to organise a painter to come in and paint a renovated property, we would have to make sure that all the walls were dry, all the plaster was dry in all the different rooms. So in the fourth of the 4 relationships is a start to finish. So in this case, the successor cannot complete until the predecessor has started. It is difficult to explain this one, and it is not a commonly used relationship. However, in the example that's been given, a contract may be active, but it cannot be active until the contractor starts work. So it's a reverse of the finish to start, which is the most commonly used relationship. If you find this one difficult to understand, please do not take too much time or effort to come to grips with it. It is the least used, and I have never seen it used actively in a project. Even in PMBOK 4, they recognise that it is rarely used. Another concept we must introduce which affects relationships is a lead, and a lead is identified on page 140 of PMBOK 4. A lead time is an overlap between tasks. For example, a lead time can allow a task to start before the predecessor completes. In the example that we have, if we need to urgently order materials because some of them may take longer to be delivered, for example, we would identify what was required at the beginning of the predecessor task, which is agreed dimensions, and we would order some of those materials before the other task had completed. So a lead allows an overlap. A lag, on the other hand, is a delay between two linked tasks. In the example that we have, we still have the same finish-to-start relationship between the predecessor and the successor. But in this instance, we may need a delay between the two. It may be an hour, or a day, or 2 weeks, or a month. The lag is the time delay between the two linked tasks. So, in summary, you must carefully consider and understand what needs to be applied at the beginning of the project to identify true task relationships. And one of the things is that this comes through experience, which is why your assignments are geared to give you that experience. True task relationships are a key ingredient to a transparent, useful timeline that means something. Don't do this carte blanche where you just create a timeline for the sake of it. Create it with intent and with purpose. Your assessment criteria. You must create a timeline end to end for your chosen project. If you have a significant project plan, then talk to me and we will choose a section within that project plan where you can do your timeline. As included in the assessment task sheet, you will also then need to make specific changes to those tasks in your timeline and show what the impact of that is and what other changes you make to mitigate the issues that may arise because of those changes.